Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today. I read several reports that stated that American birth rates have declined for the fourth year in a row. And that means that we are not having enough children here in America to replace the current population once it passes away. And the main reason why we are not having enough children to replace the population is due to feminism in the 1960s and the 1970s. Now, the feminist movement was designed to get women out of the house and into the job market. And ever since the feminist movement of the 1960s and the 1970s, women have primarily been focused on going to college, getting jobs, and having careers. And if a majority of your female population is focused on getting an education and getting a job, then they aren't focused on building a family or with a man or having babies with a man to build a family. And this is the main reason why American birth rates are declining, because most American women's main focus these days is not having children and building a family. It is getting an education, getting a job, and getting a career. And our economic system has been changed to primarily focus on empowering women by giving them a college education, helping them get jobs, and then those women using their female own group preference to get themselves hired, and then use that female own group preference to then climb the corporate ladder. And as those women climb the corporate ladder, their main priority is getting promotions and getting achievements on their resume. So they're not focused on having children in their youthful years of their 20s. They are primarily focused on going up the corporate ladder. Now, before feminism in the 1960s and the 1970s, most women usually got married in their early 20s, and after they got married in their early 20s, they usually had most of their children by their 30s, and then that they would go on to raise their families after that. But because of feminism changing America, women's priorities went from looking to have a family, primarily focused on having a career and moving themselves up the corporate ladder. And that again has had an adverse effect on the overall American population, and it has also had an adverse effect on the complete collapse of the American family. So there is no focus on developing families, and that's the main reason why our population is declining. Now, the second reason why our population is declining ties right into feminism, and that has something to do with our current economy. Now, our current economy that is consumer-based is primarily focused on targeting women and America's majority population of women. However, what we've seen over the last couple of years is that this economy is just not designed to sustain a family anymore. We have almost half of all American workers working at low-wage part-time jobs, and those low-wage part-time jobs do not give anybody an economic incentive to go out and have children. So when you have most of your population, almost half of your population, working in these low-wage jobs, they just don't make enough money to even take care of themselves, and they don't have the type of financial resources to even consider having any sort of children. Moreover, the work schedules on many of these low-wage part-time jobs is so erratic that most people don't have the economic stability to even think about having a child, because oftentimes people have to have 2 or 3 of these low-wage jobs, and the schedules are so erratic that you cannot plan to even think about having a family or taking care of a family, because the work schedule is just so erratic and all over the place. So most women who are working at these low-wage jobs, their lives just aren't stable enough to even think about going out here and pursuing a relationship with a man towards marriage, or even think about planning to have a family in the future, because many of these low-wage part-time jobs, in many cases, what happens is that you don't have these jobs like people had jobs back in the 60s, in the 70s, where you had a job for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. That job was fairly stable, and with that stable job, you could sit there and make plans to marry a man. You could make plans to have a family, and you and that man, husband, could go out here and build a life with a home, a car, and you would have money to pay for things like the child's education, the child's school clothes, and be able to take care of a family. But people can't do that these days because America's economy is just so unstable, because today's jobs, they don't even last anywhere from 1 to even 3 years, and that's not enough time for anyone to come up with a concrete plan for how they're going to be able to take care of themselves, not even considering a child. And this is the other reason why so many women out here are not having children, and they're not having children because our economy just isn't in a place or structured to sustain people going to build families. Now, 50 years ago, before feminism empowered women, we had an economy that was designed to build families, and oftentimes in our society, we valued families. But today, many corporations, especially those in Silicon Valley, they don't value family, they don't value people who have a family, and they don't work towards building strong families. Instead, it's all about the individual, and that's why our population is declining, because most Americans these days, all they think about is the individual, and we're not thinking long-term about the society overall. And because our companies today are not focused on promoting and developing people who are out here looking to be fathers and husbands and looking to build a family, this is the main reason why our population is declining, because our economy is more focused on young single women instead of being focused on investing in men. Because if you invest in men, they can go out here and grow older to become the fathers. They can grow older and become the husbands. And as those fathers and husbands grow into provider roles, they can go out here and help build a family. And that family can add to the population. And that population, as they learn skills that are passed down from father to son and father to daughter, what's going to happen is that's how you're going to get your replacement population, and that's how your replacement population is going to build skills. Unfortunately, America bought into the same rhetoric that led to the decline of ancient Egypt and ancient Rome, which both went out of their way to empower the women in their societies. Ancient Egypt had a society where women were considered to be equal, and unfortunately what happened was birth rates declined, and then they brought in the Hebrews to be slaves, and the Hebrew slave population grew larger than the Egyptian population, And then once the Hebrews left Egypt, that's what led to the start of the decline of ancient Egypt. And the same thing happened in ancient Rome. Rome started empowering its women, and that led to the complete decline of that civilization. And the same thing is happening here in America and the West, because Americans are so focused on empowering the woman and giving her the opportunity to have a career. This is what's leading to the decline of America's birth rates and America's population, and it's also leading to the decline of America's economy. Because if almost half of your workers are working low-wage jobs, then you don't have people who are in a place economically where they can go out and get married, go out and have children, and they cannot add to replace the people who are currently part of America's population. So Americans aren't really connecting the dots on how our birth rates are declining, and our birth rates are declining because we have our majority female population in the workforce, and because they are in the workforce, there is nobody there to raise the next generation of Americans. And while the women are working, the men are dropping out of the job market. So the order is completely reversed as related to building a strong population. And because the order is reversed, there's a big problem with American birth rates declining. Because if your women are working for low wages and they are at these companies working for a career, there's nobody there to raise the next generation of children effectively. So this is something that Americans aren't looking at critically, and they're not thinking about critically. All they're thinking is, oh, birth rates are an all-time low, but they really don't want to deal with the root cause of why America's birth rates are low, because they fear alienating America's women, and they fear upsetting America's women. And what they don't understand is that if we want to deal with reversing this population issue, we need to really take a look at this empowered woman and start working on rebuilding the American man. Because if we don't rebuild the American man, we're not going to be able to have an American population or an American culture. Because in order to get to an American population to replacement levels, you have to rebuild the American man, rebuild American men, and get them to a level of where they can lead and take control, and rebuild our American men so that they can take power and control the country. Because only when we build up our men will we have a family unit that will be able to bring back America's population to replacement levels. Now, when I look at America right now, if it continues on its course, we are going to be headed towards a population crisis similar to what's going on in Japan right now. Because in Japan right now, the Japanese man has practically given up on building his own society due to a generation of men seeing their fathers emasculated by their mothers. And these herbivore men have practically given up on society. And because they have given up on looking to get a wife and build a family, the population numbers in Japan have dropped to the point where the civilization is practically nearing collapse. And if America does not acknowledge that the problem is empowered women and start looking to invest in America's men and invest in rebuilding America's men, we may have a similar population crisis that may possibly lead to the collapse of America, and it would fall right like Egypt and Rome did around the same time. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, the Spinsterella trilogy, and my men's issues books like the Man Crisis, which go in depth on things like this population crisis, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com, where you can pick up my books in paperback and Kindle formats. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller.